I'm Carla Hyman. I'm a musician, a comedian, a scientific informer, and a former research scientist. And welcome to the very first episode of Lab Oratory. Today, the special jolly topic on the menu is death and fear of dying. Now, why launching with something like this? Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So, does talking about death make you feel uncomfortable? If it does, please, but please, make yourself uncomfortable. Humankind doesn't learn shit when we sit in our comfort zone. And the current crisis kicked us out of our comfort zone, so let's just use the moment to confront all of these, festering problems we are normally scared to look at. Now, talking about death and dying amidst COVID-19 crisis may seem exaggerate and just pushing the button. However, this is the main fear each and every human out there has, and it's being severely triggered right now in these pandemics. However, I personally find that looking straight into the eyes of your worst fear makes it way better. Confrontation kind of releases the tension. It is the build-up, the anxiety, the too many options, the whole brain fuck that is actually worse than facing the fear itself in a pondered and calm manner. It is a bit like, let's use a lovely shit metaphor here. It's a bit like having a really upset stomach and, doubling over in cramps and then finally taking a dump. And yes, shitting a watermelon out of your asshole may be uncomfortable, which is what we're metaphorically doing now while talking about fear of death and dying. However, the relief that comes after is fucking priceless, okay? I know you may feel a little bit triggered by the defecation metaphor, but hey, very few things out there are as down to earth as taking a dump. So let's ease discomfort with a little bit of humor. You know how Mary Poppins said, "Full spoon of sugar helps the medicine go down, the medicine go down, the medicine go down." Good old Mary fucking Poppins. But back to the topic, fear of dying. Now, fear of dying is the fundamental fear of every human out there, of every person out there. However, it has just a limited mathematical sense. And here's why. You see, here is a graph with a percentage of all the people ever born in the history of humankind that eventually died before reaching the age of 150. And it is, guess what? Ta-da! 100%. It is always 100%. So, fearing death has little mathematical sense because whether you fear it or not, you're gonna die anyway. And that's the fact. So death is the only 100% statistical outcome we have out there. It is the only certainty. Every other thing we will ever talk about in our lives is just a probability. It's just a likelihood. We live in an uncertain universe from the basic of the quantum mechanics up until the macrocosm, okay? And I'm not gonna go any deeper into quantum mechanics in this video because of all of those pseudoscientific hippie assholes out there who use it to perpetuate quackery. Anyway, slight frustration. Anyway, death. So the final outcome is the same. When it comes to the end point, the question is not if we are gonna die. The question is only when we are gonna die and how we're gonna die. And these two influence our life greatly. So when it comes to timing, unless you're gonna suicide, you're not really deciding much upon this. Of course, acting recklessly can bring you there, but that's also a form of suicide. Lack of self-care is a form of a suicide, just not a momentarily one, yeah? And how you're gonna die, oh well, there's quite some numbers and statistics out there, and let's take a look at them, even though I'm aware that for many of you out there, mathematics and statistics are worse than death itself. So take a deep breath. There's gonna be some nasty histograms coming right now. But we'll make it. We're talking about death, we can talk about statistics as well. Let's use Germany as an example because that's where I live. We are 82 million people in this country, and the annual number of deaths is slightly less than 1 million. Let's take the year 2018 for example. The number of deaths registered in Germany in year 2018 was roughly 950,000 people. Okay, so two primary causes of death account for over a half of that number, and that is circulatory problems, that's 350,000 people, and the second most important cause of death is cancer, neoplasies, tumors, and that accounts for 240,000 people. Okay, all the rest is more or less 50k deaths per category, and we're talking respiratory problems, endocrinology and metabolic disorders, psychological problems, nervous system disorders, accidents and external causes of death, and non-classifiable symptoms. So more or less it's this. Yeah, there's also urogenital diseases. Who dies of syphilis? In 2018, congrats, you should have worn a condom. Anyway, as you see, the perspective of falling peacefully asleep, age 90 without one pain in your body is not so likely, actually. The numbers are not on our side, you know? And this is something we all need to kind of take a deeper look at, without tragedy, without panic, without, going crazy, okay? So with the likelihood of peacefully dying in sleep without ever feeling pain off the table, let's take a look at what other options do we have. Well, I'm gonna tell you, it's more or less one for the large part of this population, and that is being sustained in life and sometimes overtreated, especially in some disease categories, because there's only very few countries that allow things like euthanasia or assisted death. I'll touch upon this topic a little bit later. Now, we're talking a lot about saving lives at the moment due to the COVID-19 crisis, and it is crucial and important that we do so and that we all act responsibly. However, sometimes saving lives, or what we call saving lives, is actually overtreatment. Italian language has a beautiful word for this concept, and it's called accanimento terapeutico, therapeutical exaggeration. Now, what I mean by this? By this I mean the simple fact that modern medicine has the means to extend a life as such. However, our means to grant a dignified, high-quality living are not nearly as developed, okay? There's a discrepancy between what we can offer to procrastinate life and what we can offer to make that life dignified and worth living to those people who are actually personally in such conditions. And this is a problem that's been on the table for the last 20 years, and the more medical progress we make, the more it's going to be there, but it's severely underrepresented. It's not nearly as enough spoken about as it should be, which is why I'm making this video. I want to underline with all my heart, I'm not talking about not treating COVID-19 patients enough, not intubating or offering care to sick and elderly, none of that at all. I'm talking about over-treating people whose life is so miserable that they don't want to live anymore. Okay? This category of a society is completely overlooked in this moment, actually in any other moment, but in this moment in particular. And I'll address it later why it is important that we talk about it now. Okay, but follow me for a moment. So why is euthanasia and assisted death so much off the table as a debate topic generally? Well, I personally see two main reasons there, one of them being religion and religious authorities and how much they actually control the countries we live in, if not bureaucratically, then definitely morally. And second of all, the business side of palliative care. Now, It doesn't take a genius to understand that the longer a person is sustained in extremely compromised health conditions, the higher the costs. Now, if you are lucky to live in a country that covers this, great. But way too often, a part of these costs are carried by the person themselves and by their families. So whoever's been to a hospice, whoever has a family member in a hospice, whoever works in these facilities knows what I'm talking about. It is a multi-million-dollar industry that thrives of people kept alive as long as possible. Now, you see, there are only very few countries in the world that allow assisted death or euthanasia. Assisted death and euthanasia are not the same, by the way. Assisted death means that the doctor simply prescribes medications that help the patient end their life in a dignified way, and the patient takes them independently. Euthanasia involves a direct involvement by a doctor, meaning, for example, a lethal injection or another physical assistance to the patient when it comes to dying. They are not the same, and those few countries that do allow processes sometimes do not allow both. Now, we're talking about literally a handful of them. In Europe, it's Switzerland, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. In South America, it's only Colombia. Then we have Canada, United States, and Australia. Now, Australia and United States can't be taken as entire countries. Currently, it's only Western Australia and Victoria that allow assisted end-of-life procedures. And in the entire United States of America, it is only 8 states that allow any kind of assistance. Okay, not more. Out of 52, it is only 8. Out of all these countries, only Switzerland allows foreign citizens to have assisted death in their own territory. So unless you're lucky to live in these states, or unless you're rich enough to take a vacation in Switzerland with your entire family, you're pretty much stranded in any other country. Now, as I said, the wish to end your life when it's beyond dignity may seem outlandish when you're now in perfect health, or you may be fighting a disease at its initial stages, or it's out of your mindset or not incongruous with your religious belief. However, not everybody think or feel the same. The people who actually are pondering these options are more than you would imagine. Now, let's take a look at some stats and numbers again so you see what I'm talking about. Now, Netherlands has a population of roughly 17.5 million people and about 150,000 deaths per year. Now, assisted death cases account for 3% of all deaths. It seems little, but when we do the maths, it's actually 4,600 people every year that decide to die. 70% of those are actually cancer patients. The people who are actually allowed to access these services in all the countries that allow assisted death procedures are terminal patients. It's not available to everybody, but to terminal patients whose perspective of life is about 6 months and they're affected by an incurable condition. Now, 4,600 people every year is a lot. You know, today is 22nd of March. It's roughly the same number of people who died of COVID-19 in Italy up to this point. Now, I am not juxtaposing these numbers because deaths by COVID-19 and deaths by elective death are somehow medically correlated. They're not. But currently, you're triggered by COVID-19 crisis and you're emotionally capable of relating with those 4,600 people who died of COVID-19. And I would like you to take the other 4,600 people who die electively each year as seriously, because they're invisible, because we're not giving them enough space, okay? This is the whole point, okay? And it's that amount of people every single year in Netherlands only. We can take a look at Belgium as well. So numbers are pretty much similar. I'm currently blanking on the number of inhabitants that Belgium has. Forgive me, guys, I'm super bad. But I know how many people die in Belgium every year, and it's 110,000. Out of those, 4% are people who die electively, which is again around 4,500 people. And this is only Belgium and Netherlands. Now, let's transpose these numbers to a country like Germany. Now, if assisted death would be legal in this country, it would be more or less like this. So here is Germany, roughly 82 million people and almost a million deaths a year, let's say 950,000. So if we take the same trend observed in Belgium and Netherlands, which are neighboring EU countries with very decent palliative care system, just like Germany, okay, this would mean around 28 to 38,000 people every year. 28 to 38,000 people who wish to die electively every year, meaning even now in this very moment. You cannot disregard that and still say that you're thinking of a society as a whole. It's a selfish thought. Why I'm saying this? Well, as you may guess, why would anybody think of euthanasia unless they were somehow personally involved with that? So you see, I am a former research scientist, and one of my first research projects was actually developing a new chemotherapy method for bladder cancer, especially for those cases who do not respond to classical treatment like the BCG vaccine or cisplatin. And as in every overambitious 23-year-old fuck, I thought I was saving the world and that I knew everything about cancer. Little did I know that I will learn more about cancer some 9 years later, when my own father, who was my closest person in the entire world, actually developed colon adenocarcinoma, and after 3 years of fighting, he passed. Now, there you learn way more what cancer actually means, and what palliative care means, and what having end-of-life choices means. And I'm talking about end-of-life choices, because having a choice is fundamental. It's what makes us free. It's what makes us feel that we're having control over our own lives. You see, within the last 6 months of my father's life, he was giving a prognosis of about 1 to 2 weeks maximum. And this prognosis was being extended every single week. And he went on like that for 6 months. Within that time, we were also lucky that on most days, my father was kind of okay. However, there have been moments where I wished I could put his suffering to end. And there have been moments where he wished the same. And whenever I remember that, I realize we're giving better end-of-life care to our pets and animals than to our fellow humans. You know, you take your dog and have it put to sleep. You take your cat and you have it put to sleep when you cannot watch them suffer anymore. Now, I firmly believe that everybody should have a choice to do the same with their own life, okay? Again, it's much like abortion. It's all about choice. So how does this relate to the current world-famous topic of COVID-19 pandemics? Well, you see, I just mentioned that only in Germany, statistically speaking, there could be potentially between 30 and 40,000 people who would like to choose elective assisted death in this very moment because their own lives are beyond the point of acceptable dignity for themselves, okay? Now, it is quite likely that during this crisis, these people are gonna get over-medicated and over-treated against their own will, which is horrible for them, but it's also horrible for all those people who actually want to be treated at any cost, who do want to be alive, regardless of how much it hurts, regardless of how shitty it may feel to them or to their family. These are personal choices. You shouldn't judge one like you shouldn't judge the other, okay? However, if we overtreat the patients who do not want to live anymore. We're also subtracting resources from those who want to take their last chance. And we need to consider these things because currently healthcare system is going to get overloaded and resources are going to be lacking, and this is simply as it is now. This is why we need to talk about these things, so that in times like these we are all more ready. We are all more aware of our own needs, of our own wishes, of our own requirements and demands. This is why it's important to have a choice. Now, please take this situation as an occasion to do a self-check. Nothing more, just a self-check. And to all the authorities out there, I hope that this crisis brings about all those changes that our society is desperately crying for. You will find the information about the countries who allow end-of-life care, as well as their individual regulations and statistics on mydeathmydecision.org.uk. I will link all the relevant statistics and resources in the video description, so if you want to take a better look at it, feel free. So that's about it for this time. If you like more chillax talks about very uncomfortable topics, well, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to my channel, click the bell for the notifications, and blah 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 blah. There you go. I did my good YouTuber homework, and see you soon.